everybody. How are you? Sunday the 6th of August 2023, looking at the Transfiguration of Jesus today. And I'm excited, not just because it is Transfiguration Sunday, and I do love the Transfiguration, but we have got an advert out for 2 brand new full-time priests, and I've already shown people around. Yes, amazing. I mean, we've been talking about this for ages, and at last, the role has been approved. We've got an advert out. People are responding to the advert. We're going to be interviewing people a little bit later on. We are close to sort of being able to build up a full clergy team, and then really begin to benefit and all the good things that ministry areas will offer. Thank God for Reverend Glenda, Reverend Chris and Mark, who've been sort of assisting on an ad hoc basis, and long may they continue. But, a couple of full-time priests, long overdue. Looking forward to that. How do you keep up with all these things? Well, you follow us on the Facebook page or the YouTube area. We're hoping to build a brand new website and do lots of things like that. There are more people outside the ministry area than inside, and all to play for, but exciting times. More excitement now. Let me read you a little bit of Luke chapter 9, and then we'll get on with exploring the Transfiguration. Here we go. He climbed the mountain to pray, taking Peter, John and James along. While he was in prayer, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became blinding white. At once 2 men were there talking with him. They turned out to be Moses and Elijah, and what a glorious appearance they made. They talked over his exodus, the one Jesus was about to complete in Jerusalem. Meanwhile, Peter and those with him were slumped over in sleep. When they came to, rubbing their eyes, they saw Jesus in his glory, and the 2 men standing with him. When Moses and Elijah had left, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, this is a great moment. Let's build 3 memorials, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah." He blurted this out without thinking. While he was babbling on like this, a light, radiant cloud enveloped them, and as they found themselves buried in the cloud, they became deeply aware of God. There was a voice out of the cloud. "This is my Son, the chosen. Listen to him." When the sound of the voices died away, they saw Jesus there, alone. They were speechless, and they continued speechless, said not one thing to anyone during those days of what they had seen. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Thought for you on the Transfiguration. The Transfiguration, it's a funny old Bible passage where for some reason Jesus takes a few of the boys up the mountain, like I'm sure he did many times before, but this time he is transfigured. He is seen as he really is. We get a glimpse behind the curtain in a kind of Wizard of Oz way. For me, my mind was asking this year as we come around to this time, who is this scenario for? I came up with 7 individuals who would be impacted by the Transfiguration. Let's explore them. Peter. Let's start with Peter. Peter's a lovely chap, earnest, enthusiastic, but if he had a flaw, it'd be his mouth opened before his brain engaged. So, you go through the Gospels, you can see the number of times he just says things before he really thinks. So maybe seeing Jesus as he really was would have caused him to think a little bit more. It would have been for Peter's development, maybe. Secondly, James and John, number 2 and number 3. 2 brothers, fishermen, just like Peter. Jesus gave them the nickname Sons of Thunder. I don't know why. Maybe they were loud. Maybe they had a drinking problem. Maybe they caused mayhem wherever they went. Maybe they were big lads, like bodyguards. They sound larger than life. And so maybe seeing Jesus as he really was would have helped them to realize that though Jesus didn't look it, just a bloke Jesus, he had everything, absolutely in control. Maybe it's for James and John, yeah? Then there's Moses, number 4, 14 1440 BC, right? That was Moses' time, and now we're in sort of like 30 AD. He'd been a faithful but reluctant servant, brought up in the palace, shunned that life to live as a herdsman for 40 years, and then he comes back into the palace to take the Israelites out of Egypt at God's command. He then led them for 40 years around the desert, but he wasn't allowed in the promised land. We don't quite understand why. Something to do with the way he talked back at God at Meribah. So maybe seeing Jesus as he really was would have reassured Moses that the bit of history that he was in charge of did actually work. It did actually work. And it wasn't a failure and paved the way for the future. So maybe it's for Moses. Maybe it's for Moses. Then we've got Elijah, 900 BC. So a couple of hundred years after Moses, still hundreds of years before Jesus. Elijah. He didn't taste death. He lived as a prophet for God in times when the last thing he wanted to do was be a prophet for God. He did all he was commanded in a time when all of God's people had turned away. He had a school of prophets, and he was with one of them, Elisha, on the day he was taken to heaven on a chariot with horses of fire. So maybe seeing Jesus as he really was may have been reassuring to Elijah that evil was never going to win. Because that must have been what it looked like in Elijah's day. Evil was going to win. It was just all about. That's the first 5. Number 6 then, okay. Jesus. Number 6, Jesus, yeah. Maybe after living for 30 years after his birth into the world as a man, Jesus perhaps wondered if he'd be stuck here forever, He'd emptied himself of everything, and he was simply flesh and blood like me and you. Although his divine nature was tucked away in there, he'd emptied himself of all the glory and the power. So maybe he needed a bit of a lift and a reminder that he was taking on the mantle of the law, that's all the Moses stuff, and the prophets, all of Elijah's era. When he was hanging on a cross a little while later, maybe this mountaintop experience would be the thing that he's able to draw strength from. So maybe it was something preparatory for Jesus. And the seventh, okay, a bit sneaky this one, you and me, maybe it's for you and me. Maybe there is truth in all that has been said, but maybe it's for you and me that the Transfiguration event was recorded. It's interesting that at Jesus' baptism, God the Father speaks and says, "This is my Son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased." And here he speaks again, but this time he says, "This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him." What are we to do with all the words and teachings that we have from Jesus? Listen to them, that's what. Yeah. And if we look around the world where we see light and life, we see Jesus at work through his friends. But sadly, there's a lot of dark places still. I can remember chatting to a bloke who was walking his dog. He clocked my dog collar and he said, "I've read the Bible, I've read the Gospels, I've read all about Jesus. I think he was a great man." That's all, mind you, a great man. I didn't ask him what he thought about Jesus. I just walked in home from church on a Sunday afternoon. That conversation stuck with me. It stuck with me. Because I think that when God looks at our lives at the end of time, and he's going to look at each person's life, he will ask us one simple question. It won't be, were you nice to animals? Or how much money did you make? Or did you go to church on Sundays? But what did you do with my son? What did you do with my son? The Christians, not the professional churchgoers, will be able to say, Jesus, he's my brother. He's my brother. You get to heaven not because of what you have done, but because of what your big brother has done for you, and you've accepted it. The question doesn't need to be answered with words either. Just looking back across somebody's life, you can see, people's answer to the question, that's going to be asked of them. I could go on, but I'll stop. So the Transfiguration is incredible, and it's been recorded. And it's a reminder, if nothing else, for me and you, that we have a big brother, and he's watching, but in a really good way. And he's there. watching over us and for us. Okay? Transfiguration, kind of a ponder. If you need assistance in pondering, here are some questions that I offer to you. A couple of big broad brush questions. 4 as ever, here we go. Number 1, what do you make of the Transfiguration? If you had to kind of describe it to somebody, how would you describe it? What do you make of it? Number 2, a bit deeper, who do you think the Transfiguration was for? One of the suggestions I put down, or something else? Who do you think the Transfiguration was for? Number 3, what difference do you think it would have made if there was no Transfiguration recorded? So say we got all the scriptures, we got all the Gospels, but there was no Transfiguration. What if there was no Transfiguration recorded? What difference would that make? And number 4, do you think maybe that Jesus had lots of moments like this when he was on his own with his Father? And maybe the Transfiguration is just, it used to happen every night for him, and we've got it wrong. And this one was recorded just for us. I don't know. Do you think he had lots of moments? He walked on water and he did other things when nobody was looking. Do you think there were... Anyway, I'll leave it to you to have a think. Song for today, which I'll bolt on at the end. There really is only one song on this day. It is not my favourite, but sometimes you have to take one for the team. So let's a bit of Shine Jesus Shine, is it? Okay. Shine Jesus Shine. Let me pray us out. Ask you to close your eyes. Here's the prayer for today. Dear God, thank you that in the account of the Transfiguration we get to see Jesus as he really, really is. Help us to be bolstered by this truth when the days can sometimes seem dark and grey. Amen. 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 Right, there will be another piece to camera along by somebody else in the near future. Look out for them. I'll see you either in person or back on camera the next time we meet. So you keep safe, everybody, and have a think about the Transfiguration.